This is the KC Writers Fair Author Series featuring local Kansas City authors. I'm your host, W.H. Mitchell, author of The Arcs of Andromeda and The Dragons of Andromeda, available on Amazon and free on Kindle Unlimited. Today we'll be talking to Les Lynam, author of the time travel series, Time Will Tell. Les Lynam worked as a librarian at the Ward Edwards and James Kirkpatrick Libraries at UCM, but in 2012 took early retirement to pursue his lifelong dream of writing sci-fi. His first books of the Time Will Tell series, Before You Leap and Save 9, came out in 2014. Since then, he's published two other books, including his most recent, Just Before Dawn. Thank you, Les, for joining us today on the inaugural Authors series for the KC Writers Fair. Your book series, Time Will Tell, involves time travel. What can you tell us about your series?
Okay, it is indeed a time travel subgenre of science fiction. The first three books I'm calling young adult. It's written at a level that is enjoyed by any age, I think, but it's definitely kind of the first three are kind of PG, and then the fourth one gets a little more into some violence and just a tad of sex. So I'm not calling the fourth one a young adult. The characters all age. They start out at 16 and are in their 20s by the fourth book. So they grow up a little bit, and so they kind of stop being young adults themselves.
So when did you first decide to write a novel?
I think I always kind of liked to write, and the first attempt at making a long piece of writing actually happened in high school when I was penning a serial tale that I lived in the country and rode a school bus to school, and it was like a 50-minute ride, I think. And so I started writing this kind of a soft porn thing that all the guys wanted to read and pass around, and
As one.
yes, and that was probably my first shot at actually putting together a long story. Then in college, I tried again with a typewriter this time instead of just handwritten, and had one of my English professors was interested, and he did some critiquing and editing for me. And that was the 70s, and my freshman year in college, that fall, the Olympics, the Israeli team was all killed by terrorists. About that same time, I was listening to one of David Bowie's albums that had a song called 5 Years, That's All We've Got. And so I really thought everything was going to end up blowing up pretty soon anyway. So I was writing a doom and gloom kind of sci-fi tale, and didn't get very far with it because I had to go to class and stuff like that. So that was annoying. But then just a few years before taking early retirement, I started again, and it was on this series that I have now completed 4 books in the Time Will Tell series, working on the 5th and final book now. And it's been a pleasure having time since retiring to spend to actually work on writing without being interrupted so much. Although I see my cat has come into the room now, and she thinks she's going to interrupt me, but hopefully she won't.
So when you started at the beginning of this series, did you know it would be a series when you started, or did you just think it was going to be a one-off?
I guess at the very beginning, I didn't have a long-term plan for it. I just wanted to, because I started novels before and not finished. I guess I wanted to make sure that I was finishing, and it was when I got well into what is the first book now that I realized it was going to grow into a longer story, and I started imagining a three-story, and then that finally became a five-story arc, assuming I can get everything wrapped up now in this fifth book and don't have to do a sixth one. But I think I can finish it off and it'll be a five-story arc. Um, but it was fun. In the first book, and if we'll put that up there, um, Before You Leap is kind of the introductory book where you get to meet the characters. Um, there's a little time travel involved, but no real perilous acts. The first uh, hint of peril happens in the second book, which is Saves Nine, and that features the time traveler from the 23rd century is taking his great 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 grandfather back one more generation. And so the time traveler, Sean, the initial contact, go back to 1969, where Sean's dad is also 16. And so the three of them, as teenagers, get into kind of some crazy stuff. And of course, it's the 60s, so it's a little bit crazy anyway. The second book introduces Jane, and she becomes a more prominent character in the third book, which is In One Basket. And besides Jane, we also have a new character that wasn't in the first two, and the onboard computer on the time machine actually spontaneously became sentient, and her name is Scifi, and she's kind of snarky, and that makes it fun. Who doesn't like a snarky AI?
I know I do. I love.
Right. Yes, snarky AIs. And then the fourth book, which just came out just in December, um, just before dawn, is, like I said, it's a little bit darker. Um, I wanted to do within the time travel theme some other genres, and so besides the time travel, which we covered in the second one, To the Past, and also spoiler, spawns an alternate timeline, which is a big problem they have to fix. Um, the third one actually takes place in the future on a space station, so that's got a little bit of space opera going on. And then the fourth one takes place mostly in a dystopian future, near future Chicago, where uh, cataclysmic events have thrown the world into a mini ice age, and they have to deal with that collapse of government and um, anarchy, bad people running around killing other people because they want to control everything. Um, Typical post-apocalyptic, I guess. And then I hope to finish up the final series, the final book of the series, with a little trip to Mars, a Mars colony, probably about 150 years from now or something. So one that's established. That's the plan.
So Les, sounds like each book is fairly different from each other. How would you say the series has evolved since you've been working on it?
Um, the central characters of the time traveler and Sean are consistent throughout all of the books. In the second book, we pick up Jane from the 1960s. And so Jane has a little bit of Flower Child in her and says things like groovy and far out and out of sight man and that kind of thing. I already mentioned Scifi as an Um, I got some other crazy things like um, resolving the alternate timeline brought one of the characters from the alternate timeline into the established timeline. Um, so yeah, I just kind of like get these thoughts and go, how can I work that in? Because that would be fun.
Exactly.
And I guess that's why I do it, is because it is fun. I like to challenge myself with little plot twists and do things that I hope that haven't been overdone. And I love when a good plot twist hits and I go, whoa, I did not see that coming. And unfortunately, at my jaded age, that doesn't happen a whole lot. So I like to try to throw that in. And I hope that my readers are occasionally reading along and going, whoa, I did not see that coming.
Exactly. Um, well, you mentioned Sean and the other characters. Do you have a favorite character?
I don't know that I have a favorite, or at least not a consistent favorite. Um, I think all of my characters are some kind of strange little facet of myself, and maybe that's true for many authors. The time traveler is a very logical um, Spock or Data type character. Sean starts out as a hot-headed teenager that overreacts to things. As I mentioned, Jane comes from the 60s, and so she's got a little uh, hippie child going on. Um, so I like all of them. I guess Jane and Steffi are ones that I enjoy a lot. And then in the fourth book, just towards the end, I've introduced another character which I have realized has been in the background the whole time, but has been kind of stealthily there. And there might be enough clues and Easter eggs that when someone gets to this point, they say, "Oh, I remember back in book 3 when this and this happened, and I'll bet that was." Um, but Ariel is another time traveler. She's just totally whacked out and knee jerk reacts to everything instead of thinking things through logically like Alex does. So she's fun. I enjoy working with her. She's in the opening of the 5th book too, and it's just a hoot to write her. So I guess right now Ariel is my favorite character, but we'll see by the time I get to the end of this book if that changes.
So Les, now that you are approaching the end of this series, how do you feel about that? I mean, you've been writing it through 5 books for most of the last decade.
Yeah,
Um,
it's bittersweet, I guess. But I think it needs to come to a close. I've read some series uh, that by the time they get into the 6th, the 7th, the 8th book, and I think this is sometimes true of TV series too. It's like, well, we've got to keep going, but why are we still going? And the quality falls apart. So yeah, I think it's time to wrap it up with this crew. Although I have kind of kicked around the idea of spawning Ariel and maybe one of the other characters into a new series and maybe a little bit shorter stories, since she's kind of a zip zam wowie kind of character. We can't have a long 135,000 word novel with Ariel. She needs to get in there, have her fun, and
so Les, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate you joining us for the very first of these, and hopefully we will see your next book shortly. Do you know about when you plan on having that out, your final book
I
in the series?
don't. I just did a word count yesterday, and it's just right at 20,000. So probably, if I can keep at this pace, I'll aim for my birthday in 2021, which is February. But I've aimed for my birthday before and missed. But it's good to set a goal, and hopefully we can make it this time.
Well, very good. Again, thank you, Les, for joining us. And
Thank you for inviting me. It's been fun. I hope you have a good time inviting and interviewing other Kansas City area authors, and I'll be interested to hear what they are up to these days.
exactly. And actually, our next person is going to be Rachel Ellen. And so I look forward to talking to her next. Again,
Great.
thank you, Les, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks to Les Lyman for speaking with us today. If you'd like to read Les's books, they're available on Amazon. The Authors Series is brought to you by the KC Writers Fair, coming to the Indian Creek Library in Olathe, Kansas. Check our Facebook page for dates and times. I'm your host, W.H. Mitchell. Until next time, goodbye.